Good afternoon, everyone. This is Brian Robson, the Medical Director here at Healthcare Improvement Scotland. And welcome to this, the 9th in our exciting lineup of QI Connect WebEx sessions for 2017. In fact, the last of our 2017 series and the 39th since the series began. QI Connect provides an opportunity for colleagues across health, social care, education and beyond to learn from international leaders in the field of improvement, innovation and integration. We've designed these sessions to be short, accessible and recorded to allow access at a time that suits you. I'm now going to pass you over to Jennifer Graham, who'll tell you a little bit more about the session and also about our WebEx technology. Good afternoon, Jennifer.
Good afternoon, Brian, and welcome everyone to today's session. So I'm just now going to go through a couple of quick housekeeping slides to get us started. If you could please use the chat function that you see on the right-hand side of your screen to communicate, and I'll talk you through this in just a moment. And if you are having any technical difficulties, such as not being able to hear the presenter speak, or if you keep losing connection, then please message the event manager using the chat function or by pressing *0 on your telephone keypad. So we do promise these sessions are fun and interactive, and we do want you to get involved in the conversation. So if you could use the chat function by clicking on the chat icon that you'll see at the top right-hand side of your screen. And at the bottom right-hand side of your screen, you'll see Send To. So if you select all participants, and that's really important, type your message in and then click Send. So we're delighted to have people joining us from all over the world today from the QI Connect community. So I'm keen to find out where you're actually joining us from. So if you could all just click on the pen icon, you can see the top left-hand side of your screen, and it's circled in red there. And then click on the arrow icon. And then click on the map. Lots of people joining us from Scotland, and welcome to Gisela and Rolf as well. Just give some people a couple of minutes just to catch up on that before I hand back to Brian.
Yeah, super to see so many QI connectors joining from Canada, from across the UK, and also from Singapore, from Charmaine Tan over in Singapore. Welcome to you all. Great to see so many of you on the call. Super. Now, Jennifer, thanks very much. I have the ball. So just to remind everyone, we're now reaching almost 700 organisations registering for QI Connect. Quite an amazing feat in the short time that we've been running. And we never tire of showing page after page of your wonderful logos, and we're going to show them just in a moment. However, before we do that, competition time, the last competition of 2017. So what we've decided to do is do the usual flag test, and just get your fingers on the arrow, and what we want you to identify with your arrow is the flag of Iceland. Who's going to be first? Oh, Andrew Clark. Thanks very much, Andrew. Well done, everyone. Oh, that was, look at that. That was obviously easy. Everyone's up in the top right-hand corner. Rolf, nearly, but no cigar. But congratulations to Andrew, who's the project officer, in fact, at Healthcare Improvement Scotland in the primary care work. So welcome and thank you very much, Andrew. That is absolutely superb. And delighted to say that you'll be receiving the last QI Connect mug of 2017, and also a copy of this wonderful, wonderful book. More about that in a moment. Now, I mentioned that we had so many of your wonderful logos from the QI connectors all over the world. We're now reaching 53 countries, we're reaching 61 universities, and we're absolutely delighted to have so many of you join the call and join the series throughout the year. And it's always wonderful to be able to say that the whole of NHS Scotland is also joining QI Connect. Wonderful to see NHS Scotland represented here and to be joining this series. And the universities, it's always a great pleasure to be calling out the universities that join and reuse our materials when learning about quality improvement, integration and innovation. And we're delighted today for the first time to be mentioning some of the new organisations that have joined today. Too many to call out individually, but delighted to see the Alzheimer's Society on the call today, to see Fuchsia Pilates from Edinburgh, and a special shout out to Strathclyde University, to Callum MacDonald at the Centre for Lifelong Learning at the University, who's joining for the first time today. But great to see so many new QI connectors, and you're very, very welcome. And we're also delighted to give a shout out to Professor Craig Ritchie and his team at University of Edinburgh, who are researching and studying the field that we're going to be talking about more of in a moment. So big shout out to Craig and his team. And just to remind everyone that the call is recorded, as Jennifer says, and many of our QI connectors use the recording time and time again in classrooms. This is, of course, our friends in Koawatea, in Middlemore, in Auckland, in New Zealand, who were one of the first to tell us just how useful it was to use the QI Connect recordings. And these recordings are all available on the Healthcare Improvement Scotland website. And please share and use them time and time again. We're always delighted to be referencing our connection with the International Society for Quality in Healthcare, and that organisation has been using QI Connect recordings and the whole series as an approved resource for its quality improvement fellowship all over the world. We're delighted with that. And again, this year, 2017, was our first year of partnership with the Health Foundation and the Q community in partnership with NHS Improvement. The Health Foundation is creating opportunities for improvers to come together and learn, and we're partnering so that we can deepen that connection with QI Connect. Delighted to have had your support through 2017, and I look to continuing that relationship next year. And a quick shout out to the small but perfectly formed QI Connect team, and our newest recruit, Jess Yule, up in the top right hand corner there, joins Michelle De Felici, who works on registration, along with Carmen Forrest on certification, and Alex Sterling, who's in the studio today on Twitter. And you've heard from Jennifer already on the call. So we're absolutely delighted to have this small team today, and that small team is joined today by Dr. Peter Keelman, who's a general practitioner and also the Healthcare Improvement Scotland National Clinical Lead for Focus on Dementia and also our joint inspection processes. So Peter will hear from a bit later on today's call. And please remember, it's not Alex alone that we're looking to do the tweeting today, but please tweet using hashtag HISQIConnect, and you can follow us at HISQIConnect. And that brings me on to the last speaker of the 2017 series. And we may just have saved the very best QI Connect speaker for our last episode. She's a writer, a broadcaster, and a news anchorwoman on the flagship BBC news programme Reporting Scotland. Think Diane Sawyer in ABC World News, or Rosemary Barton of CBC in Canada, or Anne Doyle of RTE in the Republic of Ireland. Sally Magnusson has written extensively on a range of topics, from children's books on Horace the Haggis Hunter to narratives on her family homeland of Iceland, or more recently on her family experience of dementia. Her best-selling memoir about her mother, Mamie, called Where Memories Go, Why Dementia Changes Everything, has been credited with improving awareness, knowledge and understanding of this increasingly common condition. Welcome to QI Connect, Sally Magnusson.
close up like that. I can't wait to hear what I'm going to say. It's lovely to be here and to be invited to address you in such a very exciting way about something that's rather taken over my life in the last few years, ever since, in fact, my mother's life began to be taken over by the syndrome that we know as dementia. In 2014, as Brian was saying, I published the story of that dementia journey, where memories go, why dementia changes everything. And the reason I did that was to try and get across to policy and decision makers, to doctors and nurses and the institutions that train them, to politicians, to people within the caring professions, to academics, to those providing research grants, what this illness is actually like to live through as a person and a family. And I wanted to suggest that if only we can develop ways of caring which focus on the individual and on nurturing every person's continuing potential and on keeping them connected to themselves and their loved ones as imaginatively as possible, we ought to be able to make of the whole thing, difficult though this illness is, something much less bleak and frightening. I wanted to help people to understand better how much families like mine long for healthcare professionals to work more effectively with each other and do more to come alongside them as partners in care. Families who nearly always know the patient best and in many cases are desperate to be able to support them better and keep them at home longer. My book and also the charity Playlist for Life, which I'll talk about in a moment, was born out of frustration over the times that this just didn't happen in the care of my mother. Being rushed into hospital with a broken hip, for instance, confused and anxious about where she was and all the strangers around her, but not allowed to have a daughter spend the night by her bedside, and at least partly as a result ending up with full-scale delirium and a bigger health problem than she came in with. Our final consultation in the memory clinic that is etched on my own memory told that since there were no drugs that could treat my mother's advancing condition, then there was nothing more that could be done. Nothing. Leaving us with nowhere to go and no props to hold on to. Now, the psychiatrist concerned, I have to make this absolutely clear, was in no sense a bad doctor, actually a very nice one. Merely one working within a system that placed, as far as I could see, no emphasis on getting to know my mother and finding imaginative ways of bolstering the strength that remained to her, affirming the life that still flamed within her, or encouraging her family in their devoted but often inept attempts to look after her. There she is there. My mother Mamie was a former journalist and writer, hands-on mother of 5, feisty, daring, smart, someone who made a later career of public speaking and was the first to describe herself as a bit of a show-off. Dementia changed her, but she remained, and I came to believe this very strongly, she remained uniquely, if not wholly, herself to the end of her life. An individual with continuing likes and dislikes and tastes and prejudices and affections and hopes, and for a long time, if we were ready to see them and to find them and to celebrate them, skills. In the course of about 12 years, the mixture of Alzheimer's and vascular dementia, that was her particular lot, affected that witty, confident, breezy, laid-back personality. It stole her ability to express herself. For a writer, it was tough. But right to quite close to the end of her life, and this is very common with dementia, there were continuing joyous flashes of sharp wit and breathtaking discernment, and in her case, I always love to remember this undiminished pleasure in puns. I remember very close to the end of that long dementia journey, saying to her one day, the last time she'd ever managed to, or we'd managed to get her to my house, and she was sitting with her head in her hands virtually. We knew we weren't going to be able to bring her here again, but I said to her, Mum, would you like some music to make your spirits soar? She just looked up and said dryly, now, would that be S-O-A-R or S-O-R-E? There you go. Not many months to go with her dementia, and she could still do that. On a walk along the track at home one afternoon, again well into her dementia experience, I stopped to tie her coat more firmly against the sharp autumn breeze. The belt was too tight and she was sort of trying to fiddle with it. And I said, I can unloosen it if you like. She looked up calmly. You know there's no such word as unloosen, don't you? I murmured under my breath, not so daft, are you? Which she parried immediately with, as you may have thought, hitherto. One of those carefully literate constructions in which she took continued pleasure. For me, trying to help my mother to live as well as possible with dementia to the end of her life, amid much that was, frankly, intensely difficult as time went on, was about finding ways of continuing to connect with her. And to do that, I had to turn my own thinking around in so many ways. Mostly, like other families, I think I did it too late, because nobody told me what might lie ahead, what would be the next hurdle once we'd mastered this one, what not to do and say and assume. Nobody said, look, yes, of course, there's progressive damage occurring to your mother's brain, and her functionality is reducing all the time, and she keeps repeating herself, and so on. But have you any idea how much of her brain is still intact? Did you know, this is what I'd like to have heard, that even in people who live with severe cognitive disability, there are millions and millions of neurons in the brain still working perfectly well? Did you know about the extraordinary fireworks that goes off in our brains when we tap a foot to a piece of familiar music, which the most profoundly cognitively impaired and apparently out of it people will do, giving the lie to the idea that this person is somehow already gone? Have you considered not only what dementia is stealing, but how much it's left intact for now? Shall we think together about ways in which this particular individual, your mother, might be helped to use what remains to her to make her life a bit better? What a difference that would have made to our family and our lives and our mother's life. My mother, who was a remarkable wordsmith in her way, described the feeling of having dementia as being on a long road, getting further and further away from myself. We, her family, wanted to know how to meet her on that road, how to walk it with her, how to find ways of letting her flourish along the way, how to understand the landmarks we'd be meeting as we clocked up the miles. Instead of that, it seemed to us that all the social and medical supports at that time, and things have improved since then, but at that time conspired only to put her in a box marked dementia and keep her there. Some of you may be familiar with the American surgeon Atul Gawande's book, Being Mortal, which is not about dementia at all, actually, but about how, in his opinion, doctors have lost their way, rather, in seeing medical treatment as the answer to everything. He concludes with the uncompromising statement, we've been wrong about what our job is in medicine. We think our job is to ensure health and survival, but really it's larger than that. It's to enable well-being. And well-being is about the reasons one wishes to be alive. I believe there's much that can be done to make people on the long dementia journey wish to be alive, rejoice even to be alive at times. And just about every one of them comes down to knowing them as individuals with continuing potential that can be tapped into and respecting their autonomy and their essential difference from anyone else in the universe. And that brings me to music. So much of my mother's functioning capacity began to go. The songs that she had gaily sung throughout her life and the instinctive harmonies with which she always laced them began to play an ever bigger part in how we looked after her. Songs she knew and that her children also knew through lifelong immersion. Hogmanay, always a big occasion in our house. And, you know, everything from the ink spots to the Sound of Music, the Hallelujah chorus to the Northern Lights of Old Aberdeen, gradually they became not just an excuse for a party, as they always had been, but a conscious device, sometimes unconscious, but gradually a more and more conscious device to keep us connected to her and her to herself. They became a means by which we could hold her memories for her and sort of offer them back to her. When she was frightened in the bath, she could be calmed with somebody leaning over to sing It's a Lovely Day Tomorrow. When she was downhearted and depressed, the Scots will like this, but nothing produced a smile like you can, they shove your granny up a fuss. worked every time. Some of the trickiest toileting moments could be eased by a swift allusion into how do you solve a problem like Maria. We went through a long Sound of Music period. Singing, you see, gave her the ability to produce words in the right order again, which made her feel exquisitely good. It allowed her instinctive and unlost harmonies, which she'd always been able to do, to fill the room with pleasure for other people, which made her feel great. And singing seemed to bypass the damaged parts of her brain and make her feel, for those few moments and quite a while afterwards, herself again. So that through music I learned that my mother remained capable of both returning unexpectedly and of being almost summoned back. And this is what is so important, almost summoned back from the long road in which she felt she was losing herself and we felt we were losing her on. But even when far off, she could hail us from afar to shout, "Here I am. You thought you'd lost me, but here I am, back for a while." But even in the darkest hollows, near the very end of the road, it was sometimes possible to switch on a light. Those old songs made her feel safe in a world that had become literally unrecognizable and among people she could no longer quite place. Right to the end of her life, it seemed to bring her alive. And I now know, through working with thousands of other people in care homes, hospitals, and among families up and down the country, that it's a virtually universal phenomenon. After my mother died in April 2012, I started the charity Playlist for Life to encourage everyone with dementia to make for themselves, if they're diagnosed early enough, or have a playlist of personally meaningful music made for them, either on a digital device with headphones, as you can see in the people we've worked with here, which is a particularly good way of doing it for lots of reasons, or on a CD, or just on a list that others know how to play and sing for you. The important thing is that the music is personal to that person's life, and it's shared and enjoyed as a connection point with others. The music can be anything. It can be TV theme tunes, it can be an old toothpaste advert, it can be a wedding hymn, a Christmas carol in July. Anything from the soundtrack to a person's life that can trigger memory and feelings of well-being and familiarity. Now, the first thing we did was to ask a blameless care home in Renfrew if we could work with a few of their families. And we started with Margaret and Harry O'Donnell. They were the first couple that we were introduced with. Harry was in a bad way, really, when we first met him in that care home. He had been in hospital, hadn't been able to go home, gone straight into the care home, and had, as is often the case, no matter how good the care home, plunged downhill. He was hardly eating, he was barely drinking, he was very rarely saying a word, and his wife Margaret left after each visit in tears. We helped Margaret create a playlist for her husband, and when we returned a few months later, this is what we found.
I am so enthusiastic about it. I think it's fabulous.
Being able to see people connecting again, being able to see the person with dementia obviously focusing on their family member again.
Just to see him become the person he is that you can see today, it's just amazing. And
this is a remarkable change in the man that I first met around 6 months ago.
Harry came into us, he was quite a withdrawn, retracted gentleman, very pleasant, very nice, but he lacked the ability to be able to interact with anybody.
He wasn't eating, wasn't drinking, couldn't get a spoon in his mouth. We wouldn't have given tuppence for him at that time. Margaret got really upset, used to leave crying all the time, which upset us. He used to get us upset going into him. What else could we do? We tried everything.
Gradually, as we began to introduce Harry's playlist to him, he began to tap his hands, tap his feet, and obviously was engaging with the music. And then he began to use words again. And this surprised not just me, but his wife. And gradually what we've seen over the last few months of introducing Harry's playlist to him, as he's changed dramatically.
And now that you've come to the rainbow. To me, it has made a big difference. It was regressed. It was right back, and I just thought it was gone, absolutely gone from me. What? Not now. He's back, and he's loud, and he wants to talk, and he wants to take part.
It's just amazing. It is amazing because he was very unresponsive for a long time when we first had him here, and we tried a lot of different things to bring him into the conversation, and he was still non-reactive. And just lately, because of the music, definitely because of the music, he has become the person he was before.
This is what Harry and I used to dance to when we met. We used to dance to this one when we met, didn't we? At the Singles Club.
Oh, aye.
We used to sing this, didn't we?
Aye, sing it. That's right,
And that's when I fell for you, wasn't it?
It's been wonderful to watch the transformation from Harry, from being somebody with a really severe dementia. He still has a severe dementia, but the fact that he can now interact with his wife when the music is on, he sings along very unprompted, doesn't really need a lot of encouragement to do it, and he's got a smile that would break hearts. It's absolutely amazing.
Tell me this, can you be sure that the kind of transformation that you're describing is actually down to the personal playlist for life that was introduced to her?
Without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt, because it's very specific music for him. Now, before we could possibly have looked at some of the medication that Harry would have been on to brighten him up a little bit, to maybe try to get him to interact a bit more. It's so much better than a chemical intervention. This doesn't cost anything to do, and we've got Harry back for nothing.
When he hears that, he knows that there's been something in his past it's related to, you know, and well, if it wasn't, he wouldn't be able to sing them, you know.
Oh, that's true.
It's a very moving thing to see sometimes, and I must confess to have had a tear often in my eye when I've seen two people who have probably not connected greatly for a number of months or even years, but to see them actually looking at each other, and I mean really looking at each other, that making a connection with each other, and that's been very moving, yeah.
You mean your own?
We all have a playlist of our life. We've all had music that has been meaningful to us. So if we can help people to find that playlist and to be able to use that playlist in a way that enables them to connect with those memories and connect with their loved ones again, it's available to everybody. We could all do this.
That's not good. Kiss me goodnight, Sergeant Major, a bit different.
Well, apologies, it was a little bit out of sync, but I think you got the idea there. And the interesting thing for us was that improvement continued every time one of us went back to see Harry. He was attempting bigger conversations. He was correcting information at one point, staying involved. And the improvement, of course, which it was a virtuous circle that led to better eating and drinking, and became a cumulative improvement in his condition. And just as wonderfully, Margaret actually told us later, not so long ago, because Harry did die last year, but Margaret told us that she had, through enjoying their music together like that, she had fallen in love again with the man that she had married, which was tremendously moving. And I was reading some of the comments and questions that were coming through that, and noting that somebody's had that experience with their grandmother. We just see it replicated all the time, all over the place. I can tell you just a little bit about what we're doing as a charity. Since then, we've developed a comprehensive training pack for health and care professionals in how to integrate personal music into care. We don't underestimate how busy care homes are and how difficult it is to innovate, within the kind of structures that they have there. But we have developed a training package that helps people to introduce personal music into care plans, and we're delivering it in care homes and to key workers up and down the country. While for those at home, we're developing a grassroots network of community hubs in churches, libraries, and voluntary organisations to spread the word. Last year, we made direct contact with more than 21,000 people with dementia, their families and carers. We taught them music detective skills to help find the right music for someone who may not be able to communicate, because we believe very strongly that it's the personal nature of the music. Music has a benign influence in any case, I think has been shown in the scientific evidence, but when it is personal, it gives people that feel-good feeling that we all recognise when we suddenly hear music that's mattered to us in the past. We also trained 1,600 health and care professionals to start using playlists with people they care for. Here, very briefly summarised, are just some of the outcomes that we've been seeing. People with dementia, the first key outcome here really is that more and more people with dementia, this plague of our times, are able to access their memories, or at least the feeling of happiness and rootedness that goes along with them. And this helps to restore, for periods at a time, their sense of identity and belonging, reduces their isolation and enhances their well-being. Our evaluations also describe cases, and I noticed that this was mentioned in the conversation. They also describe cases of improved continence and suggest a reduced number of falls. It's fascinating to see that this is being researched in other places now, because it's something that we have noticed, but we haven't been able to do any more than sort of preliminary evaluations on. We have 2 PhDs on the effect of Playlists for Life in care homes being done now, one at the University of the West of Scotland and one at Glasgow Caledonian University. But the evidence in front of our eyes is so overpowering that already physicians in Scotland are beginning to prescribe a personal music intervention in place of drugs for agitation where appropriate. Not long ago, we learned that a GP practice in Kirkatilla, which is a small town near Glasgow, had begun this kind of prescription in one of the care homes that Playlists for Life has trained in how to embed it into a care plan. And the GPs did that because they saw the effect it was having on their patients. A patient in Lilyburn care home who's been on 2 doses of a very strong sedative, lorazepam, every day for agitation, which is about 60 a month, that's a lot, was given her own music instead at the times that staff knew that she struggled and when she might normally have been expected to need a sedative. When my colleagues went back to be given the update that enables us to certify that care home, they were told she'd gone 3 weeks without medication of any kind, and her family were, this is important, her family were just over the moon at being able to talk to her again. She wasn't zonked out of her mind, but listening to her music, singing along and responding to them. So I think and hope that Playlists for Life will increasingly be part of the movement that the Chief Medical Officer in Scotland, Dr. Catherine Calderwood, has called realistic medicine, and that wherever we have trained residential homes where staff understand how to integrate personal music into care plans, what times of day to offer it to mitigate symptoms and reduce or preempt agitation, for instance, then we might see doctors following suit. A couple of weeks ago, actually, I was told by someone on the board of a care home we'd trained up in the northeast of Scotland in Murray. We'd trained them a few months previously, and he couldn't wait to tell me that he had personally seen the lives of some residents transformed, as he put it, by their access to personal music. Now, I have to say that transformation is not a word I use much myself in relation to dementia. I'm cautious about hyperbole at the best of times, and my own experience taught me that while my mother could well seem transformed one day, we could just as easily find her transformed right back the next. But this man was talking about residents who had been slumped in a chair all day, now being capable of engagement. Dull eyes brightening, dead feet tapping. It seemed to him like a transformation. And it's the same effect, I think, as I described earlier as being like the switching on of a light. The second group to benefit are, we find, family carers. Our evaluations show they experience a sense of renewed closeness and connection with their loved one, helping to relieve their stress and improve their well-being. And you just need to remember Margaret's face in that video to see it. Families at home find they can structure their loved one's day around music. Visitors to care homes have a focus for their visit and something to talk about. And here's the third key outcome. Care staff and health professionals are better able to provide person-centered care that recognises individual needs and preferences of people with dementia, thereby reducing people's loneliness and indeed improving their own self-esteem and enjoyment of their work. This is something we hear again and again, and it's self-evident in a way. It's more rewarding to look after someone you feel you can actually make smile, whose agitation you can reduce without just handing out drugs, who make you feel that your job is worth it. Ultimately, we do want governments to recognise those benefits that increasingly doctors, nurses, carers, occupational therapists, the regulatory body, the care inspectorate in Scotland, you name it, can see in front of their eyes. And to do that, though, we do need to produce a robust evidence case. And to that end, as Brian was mentioning at the beginning of the session, we've partnered with the internationally renowned Centre for Dementia Prevention at the University of Edinburgh to develop a major study into the Playlist for Life intervention. This is presently being scoped, and the initial thinking so far is that it might well be done through the GPs. But 2/3 of people with dementia are not in the formal system. They live at home, they can be hard to reach. 1/3 of them live alone, and these are the people we're also very keen to reach with the message that music can help. Because, you know, whenever I give a talk like this, for every person who tends to say to me afterwards, you know, music helped my loved one too, I know exactly what you're talking about, there's usually, sadly, another 2 or 3 who say, oh, I wish I'd known, and it's now too late. So we've developed an app to help people get started at home. It was tested by people with dementia and their carers. It's very simple to use, and it will help users to find and enjoy the music that's been the soundtrack to their lives and relive emotions connected to it. It's not perfect yet. To download the music at the moment, you do need a Spotify premium account, although we're working on other possibilities for future versions, because we would prefer it to be completely free. At the moment also it's only available on Apple devices, but we're looking to raise the money to put it on Android as well. We've also piloted Playlist for Life hubs in existing centres, you know, like libraries and churches, as I mentioned, right at the heart of communities to get the message out and supply information support. So our hubs are designed to tell everyone in a community that music can help, in time for them to get started in playlists for themselves and their loved ones now, and to provide help help and support as they do it. These playlists can then be carried with them into residential care at whatever point their condition may require it. So let me just say, it's about time I wound up here. Let me just say in conclusion that I'm absolutely not trying to pretend that personal music is a panacea. There are no panaceas for dementia, of course not. But it can, and as more and more people are discovering, it does help to make life a bit better for folk with this terrible illness, as it did for my mum. And that, I would suggest, is what the families of people with dementia are crying out for. Just something to make the people they love feel a bit better. Drugs can't do this, not the ones we have at the moment, but human connection can. And music, the music that takes you back, gives that human engagement a focus, bringing moments of happiness and flashes of joy, a structure to visits, a means of getting through difficult points in the day and whiling away long hours, a way to bring people back and together. And what could be more precious? So there you are. I'm happy now to take questions. The Playlist for Life Chief Executive, Sarah Metcalf, is here to join me with any difficult questions.
Hello.
Sally, thank you so much. That was brilliant. The chat box, as you've already seen, is full of stories and references and work that people are doing across the world that may have some similarity. And as you say, delighted to have Sarah Metcalf, Chief Executive of Playlist for Life, with you. Now, just before we go to our question, just one of the comments from Colleen Kennedy, who is a friend and a Director of Innovation and Engagement at the British Columbia Patient Safety Council in Canada. Colleen is in an airport, travelling somewhere, but she couldn't miss this session. And she said that she's absolutely thrilled to hear the stories that you were telling, and she shared the story on the chat box of the story of her own grandmother and how powerful the transformation is in the use of music at the stage in her life.
Still there now. Can I say hello?
Well, so you just have.
Great.
she can't say hello back, but she's saying hello in the chat box. So let's go to someone who can speak to you, and he's sitting next to you, in fact. Let's go to our first questioner of the day. So Dr. Peter Keelman. Good afternoon, Peter.
Hello, Brian, and Sally, thank you for that. That was just fantastic. I know the value of Playlist for Life. Personally, my mum has dementia, and we often go for drives, and she loves listening to old songs. Once we were on a train from Aberdeen to Glasgow, where she had headphones in, and she burst into there'll be bluebirds over the white posters before transformed the carriage. My question for you is, what advice would you give to frontline doctors and nurses to help us in providing care for someone with dementia? What one or two things would you ask us to do?
Well, I think I would ask you first to assure the person who you've just diagnosed with dementia, say, and their family, that there is plenty of life ahead. Because families, I'm sure you will know this, will come to you in despair. It's a hard journey, and you'll get some people at the beginning of the road and some people who are just, have come a bit further on. And I think you want to, as I was talking about at the beginning of my talk, you want to give these families a sense that, yes, there's lots of stuff going on in the brain that you would rather wasn't happening in the brain, and it's going to have an impact on personality and on functionality and on your relationship with this person. But there's still lots and lots of stuff that's working, and if doctors can tap into ways of helping families to understand that they can go out of this consulting room and go and, what I would say, of course, is go and make their playlist, because that is one very, very practical way. If doctors, it wouldn't require doctors to do very much more than to find out a little bit about Playlist for Life from our website, which has got lots of information. We've also got materials we can send out to GPs if they're interested. And then simply to say, Mrs. Smith, you and your family go right back home and spend the weekend thinking about all the songs you used to sing together. And, you know, if Mrs. Smith's daughter says rather sort of skeptically, you know, my mother's never sung in her life, you know, yeah, Coronation Street. Did you watch that? You know, just get them thinking about this and send them off to do it. And, you know, if they're led to the website or given our contact details, we can help people. We can direct them to the hubs that we're building up all the time. We can give them some advice by phone. We can send them, not everybody at once perhaps, but that, you know, I am so excited by the thought that doctors can join us in this now, because we've got a tool for the doctors, because, I mean, you tell me, but it must be very depressing sometimes not to be able to say, I can write your prescription for this drug, you'll be feeling an awful lot better by next week, which you can do for an awful lot of conditions. You can't do that for dementia. And to be able to send somebody out of your surgery with a skip in their step thinking, oh, there's something I can do. There's something we can do together.
Great.
It's wonderful.
Thank you very much, Sally. Thanks very much, Peter. And again, the comments are coming thick and fast. So, Lindsay Lockhart, who's Public Involvement Officer with the Scottish Medicines Consortium, was just saying that the role of the voluntary sector is so important. With Sally's support and Andy Lowndes' assistance, carers of West Dunbartonshire have 3 volunteers whose role is to help carers and family members of individuals with dementia create playlists to help reconnect their loved ones.
Carers of West Dunbartonshire, Brian, caught on to this very early and have done some terrific work. They're a model for carers organisations. They took this at an early stage and ran with it. And if any other carers organisation would like to tap into that and the materials that carers of West Dunbartonshire use, would advise them to do that.
They actually inspired the whole strand of work that we're doing, developing community hubs or help points, is a better way of describing them. We're basing them in places like carer centres and churches and libraries. People can actually go and have somebody sit and help them, just like the carers of West Dunbartonshire volunteers, and that's what we're hoping to set up. We're aiming to have 150 of them by next July, and that's what we're working towards at the moment, and have already got 65 organisations on the waiting list to do that, because I think that's what the beauty of this is, that it's something we can all do, and that just having the knowledge is the beginnings of helping connect with the person with dementia. So we want to get into all the communities that we can.
I'm just noticing here a question from somebody saying, I would have the slight safety concern that if people start dancing to the music they enjoy, some may need a more supported and safe setting. I mean, Sarah, you can talk to this question of dance.
Yes, I think.
But it does need to be supported.
It does. I think one of the key things that we would say about Playlist for Life is that it's not a solitary intervention, that it's not a thing that you just leave somebody with, and that if somebody begins to move and to dance, then you move and you dance with them, and you keep an eye out for the marble fireplace, and that you hold their hands, that it actually sparks that connection while you dance together. But I think that there are safety things about it, because Sally said during her talk that music is benign, and I think that is largely true, but some music may cause distress, that we always talk about how music can take people back to another time, person or place, and that's a marvellous gift, but it's also a big responsibility, and that you need to be mindful that you don't want to take somebody back to a bad place. So again, don't leave people alone. Be mindful that there may be a red flag song which you shouldn't use, but neither should you run away always from tears, that tears are not in and of themselves a bad thing, that there comes a point in dementia where it may be the only way that a person can express their emotions, and that again we support people and teach them how to
be with the person in the moment, to use their own humanity to work out, is this distress or is this emotion? Hold their hand, be with them in that moment. So all of these things, whether it be falling over the marble fireplace or having a very intense emotional experience, mean that it's a thing that you do together and are mindful in that way.
And you find from that the experience of Let's Twist Again, do you remember?
Oh, yes,
you know,
yes.
And what that revealed about what music can actually do.
Yes. Yes, yes. There's a wonderful film that we use in our training of a gentleman who his dementia had affected his proprioception. So he really struggled moving around because he couldn't tell when his feet were making contact with the floor, and that he really could barely walk. But we've got this marvellous footage of him in the living room with his daughter-in-law dancing to the twist. And there he is dancing on one leg to the music of his teenage years, completely confident, moving freely, one leg. The daughter-in-law comes up and bumps him on the bum with her bum. He doesn't fall over. There is, I have to say, a marble fireplace in the background, and a shag carpet. But yeah, so all of these things I think are that the music, I think people may have seen it as well with people with Parkinson's, that it can help people to cope with all kinds of, the music can cut through a range of things. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, and we're seeing the hospices phoning in as well. Yep.
Brian, is this all right for us? Just to get
I'm having a giggle here. We don't usually have this, but this is absolutely fantastic. This
really interesting to see that question about St Vincent's Hospice, but you.
Yeah, so let's take that one from Jackie Gillespie at St Vincent's Hospice. So Jackie's asking, has anyone used this at end of life? So not for dementia or for terminal agitation.
The simple answer is yes. That we've done work with a number of hospices in the west of Scotland, and that it is being used within Marie Curie and the Prince and Princess of Wales as not just for people with dementia, but as a way of doing end-of-life life story work. And there's a lovely little thing that we saw that in one of the hospices, at the end of the person's life, they made a beautiful box, and they put into the beautiful box the iPod with the person's music and a little book that they'd made up of each of the individual songs, and gifted that to the family so that they can listen to the music. And that was a person who didn't have dementia, they had another condition and died from that. So yes, it is being used, and it is possible, there is an impact, there does seem to be an impact on agitation, that it can be used to reduce stress and distress and agitation behaviours.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Brian here, yeah, so great. So let's just go to a quick couple of questions on the chat box. Dorothy McDade was asking, is there any information on playlists being used in hospitals for physiotherapy sessions? And just follow up on that, Alison Twaddle, who's a charge nurse in NHS Lanarkshire, said that they've been given an iPod to set up for patients coming into theatre. But it's obvious from this that we need to personalise this for the individuals. Any advice on how to create playlists when we have very limited knowledge of the individual patients prior to their emergency surgery? So physiotherapy and surgery. Any thoughts?
Like a politician, I'm going to say, that's a very good question. Allow me to introduce Sarah.
I think that what this indicates is, I feel we're at the very tip of the iceberg of the potential that music has to be used within mainstream health services, and that, yes, I do know of a physiotherapist who uses personal playlists to try and particularly doing physiotherapy work with people with dementia, and has been experimenting with that. We've done training for allied health professionals. OTs are often very interested in knowing about Playlist for Life, and that we do provide training for people in how to do that.
And just on that point, I've just remembered suddenly a picture flashed before me of physiotherapy that my mother was getting when she'd had pneumonia, and they were giving her physiotherapy, and of course she was. What that seemed to her was that this person had come along and was starting to hit her, and we were trying to calm her down, and we started to sing to her, and we started to sing by the light of the silvery moon. And before we knew we were pummeling by the light, diddly, diddly, of the silvery moon. You know, and it's just a small thing, but it makes me realise that, of course, that this would be a wonderful area for physiotherapy.
For the rhythm, and also for making people more alert, more engaged. That I think most of us have probably got, well, we might have an exercise playlist that we don't use because we never end up going to the gym, or that might just be me, but that having a playlist that we use for exercise, and that there was a question earlier on about is there different sorts of music for different applications, and yes, that's something that the app, for example, that allows you to code by or label different songs by this song is good for exercise, this song is good for meal times, so that you can create these little mini playlists that allow you to have ones that are specifically used, and in physiotherapy, ones that rhythm for getting people to pummel in the right time, but also being energized, being calmed, being grounded. All of these things have got applications. And there are other areas where it's being used. We've heard that in NHS Fife they're beginning to trial something that we've been hoping would happen for a long time, which is the use of iPods in A&E on trolleys, that when people come in, at the minute what they're trying to do is that they're trying to create generic playlists that are drawn out of what do most people in Dunfermline seem to have on their playlist, but then when somebody's brought into the A&E trolley, they will be given their iPod to help keep them calm and try and prevent delirium and distress that's going on.
And another area is dentistry. I spoke to a group of dentists who were very interested in the idea that they might have, you know, instead of just playing Radio 2, when people with dementia came in, they might have a smartphone with Spotify on, and they might ask whoever came in with them, what does your mother like? What can we play to stop her being afraid when I start poking around in her mouth and she doesn't know what I'm saying?
It is amazing, all those wide applications. Now we're coming close to the top of the hour, so just to take just some quick comments. Leslie Leduc, the Programme Manager at Niagara Health in Ontario. Leslie, thanks very much for sharing the fact that you're doing a case study and some research on a similar field in the long-term conditions area where you are. And I think we're going to put you in touch with Craig at Edinburgh University around some shared research. And Gisela Mullen, a QI consultant from Alberta Health Services. You directed us to some work by Jennifer Buchanan. Thanks very much for sharing, and we'll link in on that also. Now, just a very quick final question from Katrina Ingram, who's here in the studio. Katrina is the Scottish Clinical Leadership Fellow working here at Healthcare Improvement Scotland and also with the Chief Medical Officer. Katrina.
Thanks, Sally, for your presentation. I think it's so valuable to hear you articulate your experience of how music's influenced your mum's quality of life, and how you've been able to use that learning to create opportunities to help improve the quality of life of others. And I wondered, as clinicians and as a society, is there more that we can do to support other patients or carers who notice things that are having a positive impact, and how to spread that learning in a productive way?
Well, how to spread the learning, I mean, in a way it goes back to what I was talking to Peter about at the moment. I do find now, and this is the main difference I think from when I was going through it myself with my mother, I do find that clinicians and healthcare professionals are really, really keen now to do the right thing and to understand the right thing. The answer is always, it seems to me, about the individual. It's about seeing the individual and using, where possible, the supports of the family to bolster the individual, and not to be too. I mean, it's difficult because I know how busy everybody is, and every time I'm ever at the doctor myself, and I just, you know, and I see this crowded waiting room, and I think, how on earth these people manage to be personal to everybody. But you know, individuality and person-centered care is at the absolute heart of it. As far as spreading the kind of thing that we're doing. Sarah, what do you think?
I think that it's beginning to happen. I think our philosophy at Playlist for Life is that you spread by giving yourself away, and that there are so many organisations and groups and networks all wanting to help and share, that's why we've chosen to go with existing organisations like churches and existing community organisations, not to create a parallel structure, but to try and create centres within communities where, yes, if you've got a great idea that you've discovered that this works, you share it at that point, so that we begin to develop within communities places where we're all pooling our resources, and where people know where to come and where people know how to deal with that, and that's how you begin to spread good practice, and that's how you begin to change the world.
But at core, just say very quickly, at core this is just about telling the world that personal music can make a difference.
Yes.
If everybody knew that, then we'd be out of business and your patients would be an awful lot happier.
Fantastic. What a way to end the session. What a way to end the year of QI Connect. Thank you so much to Sally, to Sarah and to Peter. Now, I couldn't get through all the chat box, but thanks very much to Charmaine Tan from the Centre for Integrated Care in Singapore. Thanks also to Andrew Clark. Well done on the mug, Andrew, but also you found it heartwarming to hear the connection between healthcare and the arts. Great to see the comments about different age groups, including toddlers, benefiting from music. And we had some wonderful, wonderful quotes there from Sally on Twitter. Now, just to close off, look at this lineup for 2018. The only criteria for QI Connect to be a speaker is you have to be a blow-your-socks-off speaker. So we're going to start with the Chief Medical Officer of NASA. We're then going to go on to one of the super leaders in Kaiser Permanente, one of the world's leaders in shared decision-making with Al Mully. We have Atul Gawande, well-known researcher, writer and surgeon. We have Toby Cosgrove from the Cleveland Clinic. If you've not heard about the Cleveland Clinic and what they're doing for person-centered care, stay tuned. We have Fiona Godley, the Editor-in-Chief of the British Medical Journal. We have Danielle Martin, a wonderful leader in the field of studying health and care systems. And we'll hope to get Brenny Brown back with us after the hurricane tragedy hit her hometown earlier this year. We have Roy Lilly, one of the most outspoken health commentators and writers and bloggers. And then we finish off the year. If you haven't heard of ePatient Dave, look him up. He is an amazing advocate for being a patient, and for the use of technology. Now, we're at the end. We're run over time because it was such a great program today. Please follow us on Twitter. Thanks very much, QI Connectors. And if you haven't heard it already, then Merry Christmas, and we'll see you in 2018. Thank you very much.